Can hear me okay? Can you tell I'm a one-man band? So if you couldn't hear me, let me just recap. So when I first started REI DAO, what became REI DAO was in 2017. And I had looked at the technology. I concluded that it was at a basic fundamental level, that Web3 or just tokenization in general was legit. It was a great application of cryptocurrency and blockchain technologies. However, what I discovered pretty quickly was that the technology was just too immature. It would have been like trying to start Facebook in 1989 or maybe 1992. Like, we had the technologies. Yes, we had websites and we had TCP/IP and we had we had all the basics of the technology there, but we didn't have the adoption. We didn't have the infrastructure. We didn't have, frankly, the funding, from investors to drive the development of these new technologies. So it would have been a little nuts to try to create something like Facebook that soon. Although there was a company called 6 Degrees of Separation that was started in 96, 97. That was you could call it a proto Facebook, but it never caught on. That's the advantage of being an old guy like me who's been on the internet for a long time, is I've seen a lot of these technologies over the year. So what I was saying, though, is I'm nervous about tonight's session, in part because a lot has happened. So, I started looking at this in 2017, 2018. I pushed the pause button because I felt like the technology wasn't there. Near the end of 2021, I kind of dusted off the playbook and took a look at what was happening in the Web3 space. I could see a lot of excitement, a lot of interesting stuff going on. And I thought, okay, now it's time to tackle this in earnest. And so at the beginning of this year, I started just reaching out to people saying, hey, I'm working on this DAO for real estate. And I got a mix of, what are you talking about? That was probably the most common thing I heard. But another was like, well, why a DAO? I mean, I kind of get that you could tokenize, but why would you want to use a DAO? And then a lot of people asked, well, is anyone else doing this, right? And early on, there weren't a lot that I could find. I went and looked at some of the players from way back when, and most of them were gone. Honestly, there's a few who had tried to do this back in 2017, 2018. Or a couple have survived. I will show you one of them in a little bit. But most of the what's emerged just in the last 9 months, and especially just the last, I would say, 4 months, is astounding. A lot of projects have come out of the woodwork, or I should say, they've been there for a while, but they just haven't been in the public consciousness. And so I'm excited to show you some of these projects and explain how we're going to be thinking about really covering these projects and keeping you in the loop on them going forward. So the first thing you should know, so I sat down, I should say, is this past week, I was like, okay, got to get this presentation ready. And I had started a while back just keeping a Notion document. I don't know if you know Notion, but it's like a Wikipedia, personal Wikipedia, of just every project I came across. So I would create a link somewhere like, oh, make sure to go check out this project. And many of them had Discords. If you know Discord, that's kind of like a gamer's version of Slack that they had set up. That's become one of the most common ways of building community in Web3 is through Discord. So if they had a Discord, I would join it. And then, like I said, I just kept keeping a running list. And the more I delved into it, the more that would pop up. I would be on Twitter and I would see someone link to some other project and go check that out. And then that project would reference that the founder was involved in some other project, and I would go check that out. And it became this pretty big list pretty quickly. And it became kind of overwhelming, as you might imagine. And so I thought, I just need to organize this stuff first and foremost, just so I know what the heck I'm talking about and so I can keep tabs on them. So what I'm going to show you is I'm going to do a quick shift over to my screen. And this is a Notion database I've created of the known Web3 database real estate projects and or real world assets projects. So these are 95% real estate, but some of them are kind of adjacent. Like one of them is a platform for doing all kinds of real world assets, including wine. That's one of the areas they focused on. So the idea with that one is that you can buy a single vine at a vineyard and own that piece of the vineyard. So I'm going to include things like that in this database as well, because that's, I think, a very unique example, and it opens the mind to thinking about, well, because of what are the real advantages of Web3 and blockchain technology that we can do at scale that we couldn't do with the previous system. And something like allowing people to own individual vines in a vineyard, that is perfect for blockchain. That's something that technically you might be able to do with older technologies, but with blockchain, it just makes a lot of sense to do it. So I'm going to start featuring those things. Now, what I've done, we're browsing this now, but I created a website called realweb3db.com. So if you go to, here, I'll show you the URL, realweb3db.com. That's where you want to go to get access to the database. And from there, you can sign up. Just give us your name and email. We'll add you to our email list. And as we add new items, you'll hear about them. What we'll also be doing is deeper dives into each of these projects. I've gathered as much information as I can just from surfing and asking around and just building my own little database. But we're going to take deeper dives into lots of these projects. And we're probably going to start doing a weekly Twitter space so that the founders themselves could come on and talk about these projects and explain what it is we're looking at. So this is the database, and what I'm going to do now is shift over to my browser and show you some of the projects in particular. Actually, let me go back to the database for a second so I can match these up. So let's go down to the first one I'm going to talk about is Lofty.ai, and let me just find them here. Here they are. So here's their entry in the database. You can see I've got their website, I've got their Twitter, I've got their LinkedIn, some information about them. What's their structure? So most of these are companies, but some of them are DAOs and some of them are nonprofit organizations. So this is a useful thing to know about them. What chains are they using? They're using Algorand and Ethereum. Do they have a newsletter you can go to? Yes, you can go here. Do they have a Discord? They actually do have one, and I don't have, oh, that's right. They don't share their Discord publicly. Lofty does. They try to keep it to people that are people who they've gone through the KYC process, the Know Your Customer process. But they do have a Discord. It's just that you have to have registered with them. And then some more information that I'm just starting to add right now, and I imagine this getting deeper and deeper and having a more involved explanation of all these are. So that gives you an idea of just what the database itself is like. But let's go over now to Lofty itself and go to this website. So I want to feature Lofty for a couple of reasons. One is they are probably they're definitely the furthest along of anyone in terms of popularizing this concept of using Web3 technologies for investing in real estate. They've done over 100 properties, and they clearly have a lot of momentum. If you look, they're offering new properties I shouldn't say every day, but often, once a week. I think they've like I said, they've stepped up. They've done over 100 in the past year, and it seems like every other day I'm hearing about a new offering. They've done some pretty nifty things, technologically speaking. What I think is most interesting is, just from my perspective, is this website says almost nothing about blockchain, right? They just say, hey, let's invest in rental properties for only $50, and they get right to the benefits. They don't talk about blockchain at all. That ultimately is the future, I think, because the problem with Web3 is it's hard to use, and the average person, it's really confusing. So ultimately, I think what Web3 is going to be more like Linux, the operating system. Linux, you may not know, is the most used operating system in the world, but the reason you don't know it is because it runs websites. It's you may use a Macintosh or a PC, but when you're connecting to a website, it's almost certainly some variation of Linux or BSD which is another flavor of Unix that you're connecting to. And the best part is you don't know, you don't care. It just runs. And that's how I imagine Web3 is going to play out over time. So let's do a quick jump in and log in to Lofty. I actually have used Lofty. I've bought a couple of assets, and I think it's just a neat little case study. So let's see, it's logging in now. Here we go. So these are 2 assets that I own, right? And let's go to this one first. So this is Keeler Avenue. It's in Chicago. This is the first one I bought. They have these very nice charts and projections and things like this and some information about it. And they calculate your actual returns in real time. And they explain this is an occupied fourplex. I bought this back in, I want to say in April. I bought into this, and I put in literally just $50, and so now I own about that much. And my return, I've earned, I don't know, maybe $2 from it, but I transferred those $2 already out and into my wallet. So that's pretty neat. It's liquid right away. I, within 60 days, had earned a little bit of money in my investing and was able to transfer that out into my outside of the Lofty platform into my wallet. It was super cheap. I think it was less than 1 penny for the transaction. So that's one of the real benefits of blockchain, is the fact that you can do things like that. What's interesting, they have this idea of an order book. So you can go and see these are actual trades that are happening on it, right? So I bought in at $50, and now they've opened it up for trading, and what they show is the transactions that are happening. So now the way Lofty works is it's not exactly a peer-to-peer trading system where, I trade with you. What I do is I trade with them, and they basically reliquidate it. So they buy it from me, then they make it available for someone else to come in and buy. And this shows the pricing, right? So originally it was 50. Someone has made some sell orders. They're willing to sell it for $48.40. There's no open orders, right? Well, these are sell orders. There's not buy orders. But here's some of the recent orders. People have paid 48, 47.50, 48, 48. Now, the interesting thing about this is on a yield basis, if I have something that's paying, let's just do some quick math here. If I have something that's paying 8% a year on $50, that's $4 a year, right? That's what the yield would be if I'm making 8% on a $50 invested. But if I could go buy, if someone bought that investment from me for $48, well, then my yield has gone up to, let's do the math, 48, or rather 4 divided by 48. My yield has gone up to 8.3%. So that's what pricing does when you're allowed to change to trade on price. This allows people to optimize for yield and give some liquidity to both the seller and the buyer. And that yield is worth, that liquidity itself is worth something. So even though I bought at 50, I might be willing to sell at 48 because I would rather take that $50 and invest somewhere else. So that's the really nifty thing about being able to trade these kinds of assets. It's still very early. Like I said, Lofty's been at it for a little over a year. They've only done about 100 properties, but this is a really fascinating, I would say, first go round for liquid real estate. Some other things to note about them is they provide you, you can go view all the transactions like I was just showing you. These are the rent payments. So what they do is they pay out rent daily, which is a little bit of an accounting fiction. I'm kind of curious how they implement this, but they will pay out, even though rents are paid once a month, they trickle those rents out to their shareholders over time. And so that way you can log in every day and say, hey, look, I made 37 cents today. So that's pretty neat. And again, that's the kind of thing that's just really impossible to do with normal banking because the transaction cost is just way too high. So now one other thing I want to show you about Lofty is the operating agreement. So the way Lofty works, they work the way the vast majority of all real estate transactions work, is they set up an LLC, a limited liability company, that has bought the property. And So when you buy tokens in a property, what you're really doing is you're buying shares of a company. So they've created an LLC called Lofty Holding 4318 Clyburn Avenue LLC. This is all fairly straightforward boilerplate stuff that you would see in any operating agreement. But what's interesting that I'm highlighting here is the way they describe membership units, which is, again, fairly boilerplate, but they link it specifically to the token LFTY0007 on the Algorand blockchain and tell you that, hey, this agreement is governed by the smart contract available here, which if I go to, that is actually just the place we just were, right? Which is, oops, that's not it. If I can copy it. They don't hyperlink in PDFs sometimes. So this is basically takes you to a Dropbox that has all the documents associated with it, both the transaction as well as things like repair estimates, the deed, title documents. So it's pretty neat. This is all written into a contract, and it says a smart contract, but this isn't actually a smart contract. This is just a folder on Dropbox. But over time, as these technologies evolved, I think it will be a smart contract. And these files, instead of being on Dropbox, which is a centralized provider, they will be on something like IPFS, which is a distributed file serving solution. So that is Lofty. One other thing I guess I will show you is what this means in terms of, I'm logged into Lofty, but I also have let me see, it's my Algo wallet. Here we go. I also have an Algorand. Algorand is the blockchain this is built on wallet, so I can go log in there. And I have a bunch of different assets there, but here's one of them. Right here, Lofty 0135. This is the token itself. So this is actually in my wallet. It's not just a database entry on the Lofty website. It's an actual asset that I own in my wallet. So that's pretty neat. And I'm going to show you some examples of what that sort of distributed data system, what that's going to allow in the future. So that is Lofty. So now let's go to, I want to show you Realty, which is right down here. Now, Realty, I wanted to show because they're kind of the OG. They've been around. When I first started looking at this space back in 2017, 2018, they existed. They're one of the few that was around then and that is still around. There were a few others that existed back then, but I don't see much of them these days. So kudos to them for being early to it and for sticking with it, right? I mean, the last crypto winter was very tough, and I'm sure they had a hard time convincing their investors to stand with them, but they did. What's interesting about Realty is if we go to their website, again, it's a similar kind of story that they're telling to Lofty. Now, what they do, though, is instead of doing what Lofty does and allowing anyone to invest as an LLC, I'm not 100% sure that's legal what they're doing. The way they're getting around it is they're calling it an LLC where you're just a normal owner. I'd be curious to see if the regulatory authorities agree with it. That's really what it is. Realty is much more in the line with a traditional syndication that you might see in a non-Web3 environment, where you have a general partner, you have a limited partners who invest, and they follow the rules of what's called a 506 offering, a 506C offering in particular, which means you have to be an accredited investor. Usually the minimums are higher. It's not something you can do for $50. It's more like $50,000 in many cases. Now, I have not actually invested in an asset from Realty, so I don't know what the user experience is like. The thing is, they're very big on KYC, so if I want to do anything, I can't even browse the marketplace with them without having to create a user account, and then I have to fill out a KYC and go through an accreditation process. So they are very serious about sticking to the letter of the law. So on one hand, that's good, right? They are, well, that's very good. You should always follow the law. Let's be clear. I'm not advising you should ever not follow the law. So that's good for them in terms of having a good, tight business operation. It just makes it tougher for us. If we're outsiders who want to get a peek on the inside, it's a little tougher for us to see how it works. And so my understanding of them is limited. I hope that changes as I roll out this database and start doing a deeper dive on these companies. I can talk to the founders and tell you more about it. Now, one other thing that's interesting about Realty is, oops, well, shoot, wasn't expecting that. Their blog is down, but they have a Medium website, a website on Medium, and what the thing is, it's all in French, right? So what we're looking at here is all in English, obviously, and they do syndicate properties primarily down in Florida, but the founding team is from Quebec. And so the website itself seems to be focused more on French investors who want to invest in U.S. properties than American, North American investors. Well, I guess Canada is North American, than U.S. Investors who might want to invest there. So since I don't read French, I don't understand French, it makes it a little harder for me to kind of understand what's going on. They do have a blog. They do post stuff there that's in French. So it's a little challenging, but I wanted to make sure I recognize these guys because they have been doing it for a long time. They're clearly serious about it. And if you go to their LinkedIn, you can find out more about them, and you can find that LinkedIn by going, of course, to realweb3db.com and finding the Realty entry. Okay, next one I want to talk about is a fun one. This one has gotten press recently. So this is Roofstock. Roofstock has been around for a few years. Roofstock is you call them a TradFi, traditional finance organization that allows you to invest in rental properties. But they've spun off, I shouldn't say they spun off, but they've created a unit called Roofstock on Chain, and they're leaning into the whole idea of using an NFT for properties. I'm not 100% convinced that NFTs for properties are the way to go. A few people do it. I don't see a huge advantage to it, especially for what these guys are doing, which is basically just, these are homes. These are homes, basically. So the idea is I can go buy a home and do the whole transaction by buying an NFT. The thing is, that NFT, all it is a pointer to an operating agreement like we show with Lofty. And underneath that operating agreement is a ton of due diligence. I hope that happened. I hope that whoever was buying this had a home inspection and, got title insurance and all the things you have to do. So they make it look like, yeah, I just take my wallet and go in and click buy and bang, I own a home. But anyone who's ever bought a piece of real estate in the past knows that's not a good way to be buying real estate. Nonetheless, they've gotten a lot of press for it, and they do a good job of kind of talking it through. What I wanted to drill into here was, again, to sort of highlight the data component of it, right? So this is their website, roofstock.com, and they've got a nice little profile of the property, so that's cool. But what they do is they say you can go view the transaction on Etherscan. So Etherscan is the peer-to-peer platform that tracks the different Ether transactions that happen, right? And it looks like my website is slowing down. So I'm going to skip over here where I've already loaded it. And I can see the home. It's called Home on Chain. That it's a single token, an NFT token. And there's only one max total supply. And here it was minted 77 days ago, probably when they were first kind of working on this idea. And then at some point they created the LLC that bound it to this contract address. And then voila, someone bought it, and there was a transfer from the owner, which was this address, to the buyer address, right? So this, again, is in the cloud. It's a database. It's a Web3 database, so it's not a single central point of failure. It's just spread across the Ethereum blockchain. So that's pretty neat. But what's also neat about it, if you go back to here, it's got this information about it, you know, what kind of property is it, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms. Now, if I go over here and I click into that NFT on Etherscan, here's that same information, right? So what's interesting is this isn't just a website where I've slapped up some information about a property, right? This is embedded into the NFT itself, and it goes with that NFT wherever it goes. And so that really points to the power of this database being an open database. And what's cool is not only can I view that on Etherscan, but if I want, I can go to OpenSea, which is an NFT trading platform. Oops. And I can type in this address, this contract address. Here it is. And it's going to pull it up. And it's going to show me essentially the same information I showed you a minute ago. Where they have the bathrooms, bedrooms, city, all that kind of stuff, right? And if I go over to Rarible, which is another NFT trading site, I can search there and find it, and here it is. Again, there is no central database. This is all spread across the Ethereum blockchain, so anyone can have a window into this. And so that's neat, but it's going to become very powerful. Imagine something like the MLS without the MLS, meaning it's a database, or Zillow without Zillow, meaning you're going to have a database of all these properties, and you don't have to hope that Zillow has it listed or hope that the MLS has information they're willing to share about it. It's just going to be on chain forever for anyone to see. Now, another project I want to highlight is Cougar DAO. So Cougar, in contrast to, let me find you. Where are you, Cougar? There you are. So in contrast to these first two, which are really company, or these first three that are companies, right? They have set up their startups, they've raised money, they've gone out and said, we're going to build this platform, and we're going to, you know, eventually do millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions in transactions. Cougar DAO is just a few guys who got together and wanted to buy an island. So what they did is they wanted to buy Cougar Island, which is in Idaho. And what they discovered is that Cougar Island, they weren't going to be able to buy it because it's owned by the city, and they were going to auction it. And they realized the city is charging way too much for this, so we're not going to buy it. So that was that. Not going to buy Cougar DAO. However, you know, these are all actually people who are into blockchain stuff. Several of them are members of a group I'll tell you about in a minute. And they said, well, let's go find something else. Let's go buy another property. And so what they did is they set up a DAO using Kali. Kali DAO is a platform for doing DAOs. And what's neat about Kali is that it can bind a DAO to an LLC. So those examples I showed you of Lofty, where they have this LLC, that's baked right into Kali DAO. They will generate an LLC for you, or you can take your own LLC and upload it and bind it to the DAO. It's formed by a group called LexDAO, which is a legal services group. Basically, a bunch of blockchain curious lawyers who are interested in moving these real world assets on chain, which is the whole reason I started this website in the first place. So we have a Cougar DAO on Kali. I've joined it, and the way I've joined it is you basically just give it money, and then you're a member, right? So I'm going to go over here and take a look. Here are the different members and how much money we've put in. This is using USDC, I think. Is it USDC? Which is it's a stable coin. So these correlate exactly to dollars. You can see I'm right here at scruggs.eth. I've got $994 in. Someone else has 1,005. Someone else has 2050. And if we go to the treasury, we can see the total. We've got $10,080 all in USDC there. And I was showing you members right now. And now we are still out looking for properties. So we are looking in a few areas. I'm looking in Northwest Arkansas, the Bentonville, Fayetteville area. We're also looking in Boise, Idaho. We're also looking in Memphis. I shouldn't say Boise, just anywhere in Idaho, and then in the Memphis area. So if you have an income producing property, bring it to us because we're interested in buying it. And we're doing this mostly as a proof of concept that you can buy and manage a property on a pure DAO like Kali. And so this is what I think is, this is the kind of thing that's going to become very common once a few people do it and show that it can be done. Because, in the past, there's nothing to stop you and a few friends getting together going and buying real estate, right? But what this does, this allows you to put money in right away, right? So, you may have tried to buy a piece of property before and a friend says they're in, but then they back out or they start hemming and hawing when it's time to put in money. Well, you can just say, here, go deposit money into this contract. That's how I know you're serious, right? And now that we have this money in this contract, we can use that money when we are talking to brokers, to show that we have earnest money, that we have money lined up to pay for it. So I fully expect that this is the first, but it'll be the first of thousands of different types of projects like this. And this is, even though Kali's its own platform, this is what REI DAO is for, is we envision creating these pools of investors, each with people who have different ideas and different areas of expertise that they can use to do these kinds of transactions. So stay tuned for what we do with Cougar DAO. It's some really fun guys in the group, some smart guys who've all been doing web and NFT stuff for a while, and they're also attorneys, so they understand the legal aspects of this. So that's one I wanted to show you. And then another thing I wanted to show you was where I met those people. So this is the Real World Assets Consortium. So this is a nonprofit that does what I'm trying to do, right? We focus on trying to get more people to put real assets on chain. And the way we do this is pretty simple. We've used GitHub to publish a standard, just a basic set of standards for how data should be handled, right? So I won't bore you with the technical details, but this is a JSON standard that shows this is how you should report information. This correlates to, if you go back here where we have this kind of information that's on chain, these are all properties that are included in the transaction. We would do the same here with business information. And we also have just a couple of things: legal entities, we have property entities, and we have payouts. But over time, we see this becoming much more detailed to encompass all types of business transactions. The model we look at is something called XRBL, which stands for Extensible Reporting Business Language. Did I say that right? XBRL. Anyway, it's the standard that's used by NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange to report business data in a machine-readable forecast. That's what allows computers to fetch data from the stock market and show it in real time or near real time is these standards. And then one other I want to show, a couple others I just want to dive into real quick. So one of them is called Fry's DAO. Fry's is it's not exactly real estate. What it is, it's a DAO that's going to purchase a restaurant. It started kind of as a joke. And this guy who's kind of a thought leader in NFT space said, you know what? What if we all lose? If we lose money on Ethereum or whatever it is we're holding, we can always just go work at a restaurant. We can become fry chefs at a restaurant. And so someone said, hey, why don't we actually try to buy a restaurant and put it on the blockchain? So they created Fry's DAO. And they're out working on it. It's proving to be harder than you might think. This is true of real estate in general. Anyone who jumps into commercial real estate realizes quickly that it's not as simple as just kind of browsing the MLS and buying a house, right? There's a lot involved in terms of getting interest. They're having the challenge because they set up as a true DAO, not as an LLC, but an actual DAO LLC, a Wyoming DAO, I believe. And so they are out making offers on these restaurants, and the sellers are kind of like, what? Who? What's this DAO thing? So that's been a challenge for them. Nonetheless, they seem committed to it. They're sticking with it. So if you're interested in buying a restaurant and being in on the ground floor of a new concept, then Fry's DAO is for you. They have let me pop over to the Discord real quick. Right here is their Discord, very active, lots of people talking about fries and stuff. So, it's a real project, and this is one of those early type of projects that it may not be that fries itself becomes a huge hit, but the concept is laying the groundwork for future possibilities of using DAOs to manage real estate assets. And I want to show you one other here, which is Cabin. If I can find you, Cabin, where are you? So Cabin is not an investment project per se. Like, you can't go out and invest in Cabin, but what you can do is participate in this whole network they're creating. So their idea is they'll have this virtual neighborhood of properties, and people can join and become members of it and come stay at it. So like, you could contribute your property to Cabin, and they're focused right now on creative types. So people who might benefit from going off the grid or semi off the grid for a month and writing a book or working on a painting or music or whatever. They have these co-living spaces, and people can pay money to get it, to join, but you can also earn tokens by helping out. So they have these occasional weeks where people will just get together and say, hey, we're going to build a compost pit. Show up, and if you do the work, then you'll earn 1,000 Cabin coins. So this is still a very new concept, but Cabin is very popular with a certain set. You can see they're doing some interesting projects here. They've got a co-living space they're working on, a couple of them. And I'm actually looking also, I mentioned Northwest Arkansas. I'm also looking for a property that will be a good fit for Cabin. So this might be the kind of thing where maybe you have a passion project that you think would make sense for the folks at Cabin to know about and maybe participate with. You could bring it to them and see if you can work out a business model. And I guess while I'm at it, I'll mention one other that's kind of like that, which is Tiny House DAO. If I can find you, where are you at, Tiny House DAO? Here you are. So Tiny House DAO it's kind of like an Airbnb for tiny houses. They're still very early, but it's people who are enthusiastic about tiny houses, and they've got some set up, and you can go there and stay here and reserve them. And if you're into tiny houses, this is the place to be, right? So it's a place to both market your property, but it's also a place to learn about building tiny houses. And they have a very active Discord, and it's just a neat space. And so I guess if I could leave you with one thing, I'm going to wrap up here. It's that so the basic stuff that we always think of when we think about real estate, apartment complexes, retail, office space, that's all going to be on chain eventually. And it's going to be a slow process, right? Because the process of buying an apartment complex is fairly well understood and pretty straightforward. And so there's enough players in the marketplace to where doing it on chain, it's not a radical upgrade, right? It doesn't take something that was impossible and make it possible, or make something that was possible and make it easy. There's still a lot of work there. So the on-chain part it's going to be a slower evolutionary process. Where you will see a lot of action is these, frankly, weird projects, right? Something that's just a little different. If you want to do tiny houses, or if you want to build creator cabins, or if you want to be able to sell a single vine on a piece of real estate. I forgot to mention that. This is Matarium. They do that. This is the place, right? Real Web3 is where all the weird projects go. And, things can start out weird and become huge. I mean, I remember the very first internet broadcast of a radio show. It was NPR back in 1993. And it was one of those things where people were like, I guess that's kind of neat, but what's the big deal? Why, I can listen to a radio just by turning on the radio. Why would I listen to sound on the internet? Well, there's a lot of reasons, right? But it took a few years, and that's how I feel about these technologies today. So let me just get back here so I can wrap things up. So that is it. So I'm going to be posting a recording of this, and we'll also be posting the podcast version of this. So if you only heard part of this, you can listen to the whole thing. But I hope this gave you a sense of the many different projects that are going on, and perhaps sparked some ideas for yourself of projects that you could be doing, either starting on your own or participating in some of these projects. I would really ask you to please, like I said, go to realweb3db.com and sign up for that email list. This is a list I put together just literally in the last 5 days. I started working on this, I want to say Thursday, because I was kind of starting to feel overwhelmed. I was like, man, I've got a lot of these. How do I make sense of these? And so I started just creating this database. And every time I turn around, I would find something new. And already it's over 30 entries. So it wouldn't shock me if a couple weeks from now, it's at 50, 60, 100 entries. And by this time next year, maybe it's 1,000 entries. So get on the list. You'll be notified of them. It's a chance for you. If you have a project that I didn't mention or is not on the list, please submit it to me. And that is it. Thank you all for coming tonight. We're a little bit shorter tonight, so I hope it was a little more bearable. And I will see you next week. Thank you.